Well, hello everyone. This video is going to be about rebuilding Ford 1948 to 1952 Ford F1 pickup truck steering box. These are a favorite. People used traditional hot rods back in the day, and that's what I'm building, so that's what I'm doing. And what I've done on mine is I've cut the mounting flange off a Model A steering box, and then I cut the flange off the original F1 steering box, and I had them welded together and ground that down and painted it up. So anyway, that's mine. If you're doing a stock F1, your mounting test is going to be longer. You're going to have a seal here. I don't have that seal. If you're doing the Model A one, you're going to have to get a Model A bushing and a Ford F1 bushing. There's two different inside diameters in here, or I'm sorry, outside diameters. You'll have to put the Model A, press the Model A bushing in, press the F1 bushing in, and then take it to a machine shop and get it honed to your sector shaft size. So that's where we're at, and that's where we're going to start off. I've pre-lubed my bearings, but you have a couple bearings that go on the steering shaft. One of the first things you got to do is grease up the bearing race on the steering shaft, the upper race. I'm using John Deere cornhead grease. Since I don't have seals and stuff, oil would just leak out all over the place. So this grease, it's kind of cool because when it senses motion, it turns into like an oil. And once the motion stops, it turns back to a thicker grease. So you don't have the problem of all your oil leaking out of your steering box all over your garage floor. So a lot of people use this, so I'm going to try that. Anyway, I got my bearing lubed, and I'm going to slide it on the top of the steering shaft. Okay. And then I'm going to slide the whole steering shaft and bearing into my steering box. And then next I have another bearing that goes in there. There's also, of course, a bearing race in there. Throw a little grease on that. Bearing in there. And then the other side of the bearing race. Grease that up. So this bearing race, what it does is you're able to, it slides in and out, and you're able to adjust. Okay. You're able to adjust the tension on the bearing races by adding or removing paper shims. It sits in there like that, and it sits a little proud of this surface right here, so that you're able to shim it. Okay. And in preparation for the video, I kind of did a dry run with this stuff, and I figured out the amount of shims I need, paper shims, to get the right feel of the steering shaft. And this plate right here, when you tighten the bolts up, it puts pressure, and you're able to adjust it back and forth. And this tube right here goes all the way through the steering shaft, and this is where your horn wire comes out. So you want to make sure that's clear. Mine was all clogged up. I had to clear it out with another piece of tubing. slide that on there. You add your 4 bolts. We have a thunderstorm rolling by here. I'm going to go ahead and check this fit out. I'm going to snug up the bolts pretty good, like I would in the car. Okay. Then I'm going to check out how easy that steering shaft is to turn. You want a little bit of resistance to turn it. That's a little bit of resistance right there. If it's too much resistance, you want to add a shim. If it's too little resistance, you can remove shim. And the shims come in a packet, and there's like my kit had like 4 9/1000 thick shims and 4 2.5 shims. So I just adjusted those to where it's right. I started out with 3 thick, and it was too loose. 2 thick was too tight. So took out the thick, added 3 thins, and it's pretty good. So there's that. And then I know by dry fitting in my car that the keyway here, in order for my steering wheel to be in the right position, has to be towards the bottom. So I'm going to turn that towards the bottom. Somewhere around there. Okay. And then now the sector shaft is going to go in there. And when you first get your steering box and you decide to rebuild it or whatever, you have to check for galling on the sector shaft and the worm gear, and also on those bearing races of the worm gear. Common place for galling. And what I mean by galling, for those that don't know, I have an old shaft here that I'll show you what the galling looks like. I hope you can see it there, right in this area where it wears. Basically the smooth machined surface is all pitted out and rolled over and stuff. So you don't want to use that. They're available to replace. They're like $60 or $80 a piece. So not cheap, but if you have to replace it, you can. I was lucky I had extra parts that were pretty good. So I'm using them. All right, so steering shaft's in. I'm going to go ahead and fill this steering box with grease before I put in my sector shaft. I don't have a grease gun this big, so just scooping it out of the tube. Good. I know most of it will get pushed out when I put in my sector shaft, but I'm going to go ahead and grease my bushing in there too. so I'm gonna grease this all up. I think that's pretty good for now. And when I did a dry run on my car, what I did is I figured out where my steering wheel was centered, and then also the steering arm, where the steering arm was straight down. Alright, now that the sector shaft's in there, I'm just going to go ahead and fill the rest of the box with grease. Stuff's pretty runny, actually. Maybe it's because it's so hot here in Florida. That's probably pretty good. Okay, let's see. Next, this is the adjustment, it adjusts play out of your steering wheel, and the screw is offset a little bit. So what it does is there's two grooves in the sector shaft, and you slide it in from the top, and all you got to do is make sure that screw is kind of centered in your box, not off to one side, or else the cap won't fit. There we go. All right, now the steering box is mounted in the car. I have my steering wheel centered, and I have the pitman arm as close as, straight down as I can get it. What's really important is that you get pretty much equal turns of the steering wheel left and right. So I test, just start counting 1, 2, and a little bit. Okay, so 1, 2, and that's centered again. 1, 2, and a little bit. It's a little bit more that way, but the steering box doesn't stop your steering anyway. There's steering stops set up on the axle. These stops right here, as you turn, the spindle right here, the spindle right here has a dot, and that's going to hit that as you turn and stop. So as long as you have equal turns on the steering wheel, your worm and sector shafts are right. Okay, now I'm going to adjust the play out of the steering box. If you grab the pitman arm, you can move it like that. You take the adjusting screw, just screw it in, and I'm just wobbling this, and it'll get tighter and tighter as you screw the adjustment screw in. And that's pretty good right there. Then I'm just going to test it real quick. See if it's smooth. And it is smooth. So that should be pretty good. And you have a star washer that goes on there, and it's got a little key in it. You put it in there, and there's a little bump on the steering box cover that star washer goes over so that it can't turn, retains it. And then tighten your cap. And that's it. I mean, I still have to put on my steering column and stuff, but I got to mess with the lock and everything. But that, as far as the F1 box goes, that's how I did mine. So hopefully, and it should be good. Steering smooth, equal both turns. Pitman arms down. So that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Thanks for watching.